Hey everybody, Alex Wiseman here. I am your professor for EDLD 6300 Organizational Theory and Education, and I am excited to start the semester with you and wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the syllabus and the really the assignments and the weekly activities and readings and videos that you're going to be doing, a little bit about the policies related to the course and sort of other details. So this is a way of us, just to be honest, saving some time in our synchronous meeting so that we don't have to talk about the whole syllabus during that meeting. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but this should expedite things. So great to be with you, great to meet you virtually, and I'm excited to be a part of your life this semester. And I think you're really going to enjoy the content. It'll be very helpful for those of you who are really all of you. There's some different career trajectories in the class. Some of you are headed into administrative positions in schools and in districts. Some of you are thinking about policy as a career and working with nonprofits or government agencies. Some of you are doing other education-related things. All of you, however, will need to have an understanding of what organizational theory is in order to do your jobs the most effective way possible. And also, if you're interested in literally thinking about and understanding the phenomena that happen in classrooms and schools and systems related to education every day, then you need to have that theoretical basis. And that's what we're here to do, at least for the organizational part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the different sections of the syllabus. I'm going to talk to you about just what it says, give you my own spin on it, point out things that I think are important. And hopefully you will have looked at this video and gotten some of my insight before we meet for our first live class. If not, I'm always available for you to ask questions, both asynchronously and synchronously. So that's never a problem. Okay, and I have my little pointer with the red thing so you can see where I'm pointing. So we are in the educational, at least I'm in the educational leadership program, and this course is offered through the educational leadership program. It's a 3-credit class. This is our semester going on right now. It is an online class, which means that you will have activities. If you've already visited our Blackboard site, you know this, that are things that you can do through the online Blackboard site, as well as the internet, YouTube, readings that you can access online. We have a lot of that available for you. However, we will have several synchronous, that means live, you and I face-to-face, using this very tool that I'm using right now to record the screencast. We will be live or synchronous online from 6 to 9 p.m. Central. So if you're in a different time zone, this is 6 to 9 p.m. Central time zone. On the following dates, these are all Tuesdays at 6 p.m. January 22nd, February 5th, February 19th, March 5th, March 26th, April 9th, April 23rd, and May 7th. Please put those on your calendar. Please block off 6 to 9 p.m. each of those dates. I am really excited to get to spend some quality time with you online during those times. I would just say right now, if there is ever a time when you think you might not be able to make one of those classes because you have a professional commitment, either through your job or something else, or because of illness or because of an emergency or whatever it might be, except for the emergencies, unless you know ahead of time you're going to have an emergency, you should let me know that you're not going to be there, so I'm not, we don't wait for you, and I'm not counting you off in terms of participation score. Also, we will be recording all of our live classes, so be prepared for that. That means that if you miss a class, you will be expected to watch the recording and then participate accordingly in follow-up activities. It also means, because we're recording on these live days, that if there's something that you missed or you want to revisit or you think was especially important or especially confusing or whatever, or you had to step out and get a snack or go to the restroom while we were having class, you will have those recordings available to you as well, and so you'll be able to look at those. But the first priority is to be there, live, synchronously, online with the rest of us on these dates. This class is supposed to be doing a couple of things. One is developing your understanding and use of theories related to individuals and organizations. That's important, which emphasize leadership, decision-making, motivation, and change. And then secondly, to develop your skills in analyzing educational policy situations and leadership events by demonstrating the application of organizational theories to educational policy and leadership practice. In other words, we're trying to not only understand how theories help us understand educational phenomena broadly speaking, but we're trying to think about how educational theory can help us understand educational phenomena specifically as it relates to policy and leadership. There's a big, broad world out there of organizations and organizational functions. We're going to focus a lot, especially in our discussions and in some of our activities, on the policy and leadership side of things. But I think it's applicable more broadly than that. I know it's applicable more broadly than that. I want to say something about theory, and one of the reasons why theory is important and why you're taking it. I hear a lot from folks, especially if they're in the thick of it as educators or working in educational organizations. They often say, we don't really need the theory. We need to be able to implement. We need to be able to do things that actually make a change. And I don't disagree with that at all, but I will tell you right now that what makes you a better practitioner is understanding the phenomenon and having alternative ways of understanding that phenomenon so that you're not just repeating the same nonsense if you're having trouble, or repeating the same success that eventually will become worn and outdated over and over, regardless of context, regardless of community, regardless of the intervening variables, regardless of the different agendas or perspectives. Right? You have to understand theoretically and what might be going on and what some of the alternative explanations would be in order to understand practically what the best options or best courses of action might be. So it really is a hand-in-hand thing. What I will just speak very candidly with you. There are many PhD and EDD programs out there that are much more atheoretical than you will be getting in this class, indeed. And the people who graduate from those programs they're great people, and to no fault of their own, they unfortunately have often not been equipped with a theoretical foundation, and so they don't really understand what is happening a lot of the time. And their vision for what's going on in their school or in their organization or their educational agency or whatever it is often very reactionary and short-term because they're usually trying to either solve the immediate problem in front of them, and they don't have much of a vision or an understanding of the underlying phenomena behind or underneath the things that are happening. Or they're just reacting. They're constantly reacting and putting out fires or reacting to whatever it is that might be popping up on a day-to-day basis. Or they're simply always looking for the elusive best practices. Best practices, by the way, are only best in a particular situation. Just because it works one place doesn't mean it's going to work somewhere else. And you know how you figure out what works and what doesn't work. You have a theoretical understanding of what's going on and what some of the conditions are that are leading to those results. And then you make decisions about what might be best or what might be adopted and how it would be a contextualized solution. So I'm giving you in the 4 lines of text and like 5 minutes of explanation so that you understand the importance of theory. The theory is really the framework and the foundation for all of your thinking and your understanding that precedes the action, that happens concurrently with the action, and that it is takes place after the action in order to understand what just happened. What did I just do? All right. The purpose of the course is to address problems and issues in educational leadership and policy using organizational theory as both a conceptual framework and a practical lens. And now there is some discussion about what the distinction between a theoretical framework is and a conceptual framework. That is a discussion that we can absolutely have in class. And so put your thinking cap on and see if you can figure out what the difference is ahead of time. But notice that we're linking the conceptual with the practical, or the theoretical with the pragmatic, or however you want to frame it. This course will cover the major strands of organizational theory with application to education, including how organizations are structured, the role of resources and resource dependence, strategy, symbols, institutional theory, which you'll hear a lot from me on that, organizational culture, socialization, leadership, decision-making, and quite frankly, many other content areas. These are just some of the ones that we're highlighting in the purpose statement. And again, the objectives are to identify and understand the major strands of organizational theory with relevance to education. I say that because a lot of the readings that we'll be doing are not specifically geared towards education. In fact, the major textbook for this class is not a exclusively education textbook. It is actually for the broader organizations, business, management world, which education can be a part of. And fortunately for us, the authors of our text are very familiar with the educational realm and educational organizations. But I do want you to know that we're thinking about organizational theory and that it has relevance to education. And then secondly, to apply organizational theory to educational leadership issues and policy problems, as I mentioned up here in the description. As I've already said, my name is Alex Wiseman. You can call me a lot of different things, but please feel free, if you feel comfortable with it, to call me Alex. It's my first name. I consider you as doctoral students to be your students, but you're also future colleagues. So feel free to call me Alex if you'd like. Otherwise, Dr. Wiseman is fine. But for the daring, call me Alex. If you are on campus and you'd like to visit, I'm in room 305 of the College of Education. It's just on the 3rd floor. I'd love to see you. Please come by. If you would like to make an appointment, just contact me, usually by email. We'll set up a time. If you just happen to be in the neighborhood, come by. If you're up there and you don't see my door open, don't be shy about knocking. I tend to work better when I have less distractions, so often I will close my door if I'm trying to think about something. Doesn't mean that I don't want to see you, though. It just means that I'm working. Knock on my door. If you'd like to call me, this is my phone number at the office. You can call, and if I'm not there, you can certainly leave a message. In fact, I encourage you to leave a message, because if you don't, I have no idea who you are or why you're calling. The quickest way to reach me is always by email, alexander.wiseman@ttu.edu. Please feel free to email me literally anytime. I will do my best to respond in 24 to 36 hours. At least to let you know that I got your email. I obviously will respond more quickly to emails that are true emergencies rather than ones that are conjectural or you're not really in a crisis at the moment. But I will respond regardless of what your purpose is or your need is as quickly as possible. I have had regular office hours in the past. Typically, they're a couple of hours before class. Rarely do people show up, which is, I guess, a good thing. That means that folks have most of their questions already answered. So what I have here is my office hours are by appointment. What that means is, instead of me setting a time and saying you have to fit your schedule to my availability, I'm saying that I will work with you. When is convenient for you? Is early morning best? Great. Is late in the evening best? Great. If you're halfway around the world or in a different time zone, we'll work at a time that works for your schedule so that you're available and I'm available at the same time. So actually, this is a much more accessible way to do it, even though it looks like it isn't. At the beginning of the syllabus here, you'll see there's a lot of detail that we're asked to put into our syllabi in the College of Education, just to give you a good understanding of what how the course is situated within the broader framework. You may already know this, but every program in the college has a trademark outcome. I've listed here the trademark outcomes for the PhD in Educational Leadership Policy and the EDD in Educational Leadership. If you're from a different doctoral program, I didn't list it here because you're not in the Ed Leadership program, but this will give you some idea of how those two programs differ and at what the trademark outcome is. The good thing is that both of these are highly relevant and need to have organizational theory as part of them. So we're all in the right spot. If you're not already familiar with it, there are 3 phases of most programs, or all programs in the College of Education. There's a phase 1 that's really about foundation stuff. Phase 2 that's about advanced knowledge and some application. Phase 3 is when you become a little more independent. You apply advanced knowledge and skills. This class happens to be a phase 1 course because we're trying to establish foundational knowledge, skills, and professional judgments required to succeed in your track area. So be aware that that's what this is. We also have the opportunity to apply and evaluate. In other words, you're taking what you're learning about organizational theories and you're applying it to your own organizational context, which means that you get to identify a problem or an issue or a topic that is relevant to you and your organization, whether that be the one that you're working in currently, if you're working, or one that you plan to be a part of in the future. We will be able to apply the theories into that context using our conceptual understanding of educational leadership and policy through an organizational lens to make organizationally relevant recommendations that will help us adjust and implement genuine educational change and provide evidence-based critiques of leadership and policy as well as solutions to those critiques. And I include the solution part because it's easy to criticize, it's hard to create. And so we want to be creators. There are several learning outcomes that are associated with this course. You can read through those on your own, but I will also point out that one of the main ones is, and the longest one here, is simply to understand organizational theories. How do you understand and grasp this super large field? By the way, organizational theories, we've got a whole semester. We won't even scratch the surface. We'll get the main stuff done, but we won't cover everything. So the main point is for you to come away with this understanding organizational theory at a competent and professional level. You should be able to understand these organizational theories in reference to education, which is why we talk about you're expected to explore the viability of educational agendas, policies, and programs for bringing about sustainable, positive change in educational systems that related to your understanding of organizational theory. We also are expecting you to critically explore evidence concerning the effects of educational agendas, policies, and programs related or relative to your official and or unofficial goals. In other words, how can you use your understanding of organizational theory to make decisions and to understand phenomena that happen in the real world? Think of that. Finally, we're hoping that you will synthesize the empirically demonstrated impact of educational agendas, policies, and programs using the relevant organizational theories. If you'd like to, the organizational topics or the topics that we'll cover in the class are linked to these learning outcomes. It's pretty obvious. They're all linked to all of them, basically. It's part of what we do every week. It's not divided across the weeks. It's really an all go for broke approach. We have one required textbook. It is Bowman and Deal's 2017 version of Reframing Organizations, Artistry, Choice, and Leadership. Please make sure that you get the 2017 6th edition or the 6th edition, whatever it is. It's a white cover. It has an orange square in the corner. It's Bowman and Deal, Reframing Organizations. The ISBN is here. You can buy a paperback version on Amazon right now, I think for $43. You could probably find used versions, but they won't be the 6th edition. And I'm just going to say it one more time. 6th edition is the one that we're using for this class. I highly recommend that you get the 6th edition. If you get a previous edition, it'll suffice, but it won't match all of the things that are in the 6th edition. I don't know how to say that any more times. The 6th edition is the best one to get. Please get the 6th edition. Okay. There are other required readings that will be linked to online resources, or you'll be able to use the Texas Tech Library's electronic databases, especially ERIC and JSTOR. If you're not familiar with how to use these electronic databases to retrieve articles, please let me know, because I think that's worth dedicating 15 minutes of class time or another screencast to talk to you about how to do that. It's really important, especially at a distance. You can access literally almost all of the information that is available in the world through the online databases at Texas Tech's library. So let's talk about that if you aren't already familiar with it. Okay, on to the assignments, evaluation, and grading policies section. So I am a fan of having things add up to 100. 100. If you get 100, you have aced the class. So congratulations. Right now, as far as I know, all of you have 100. It's broken down into different assignments. One is participation. One is that you're going to be a discussion leader during one of the weeks. And then the rest of these are pieces of your final complete draft of your project. So let's talk about those each, in turn. So participation. This is, as you might have already guessed, a graduate level seminar style course. Even though it's online, it's seminar style, meaning that there are lots of different resources that you are provided every week or every 2 weeks. It's your responsibility to engage with those readings, in other words, do the readings, watch the videos, and complete the assignments. That's you. You have to do that. And in an online course, an online program, you taking the initiative to do that prior to our synchronous classes, which happen roughly every 2 weeks. It's all on you. It's all your responsibility. So you're expected to participate in the class both synchronously and asynchronously. Synchronously means you show up for the online sessions, those live synchronous sessions on Tuesdays at 6. Asynchronously is the stuff that you do on your own, not usually with anyone else sitting by your side. So you're reading or you're watching or you're writing your assignments. You're participating in the discussion board, which I will have a longer talk about that with you in a second. You are making sure that you're contributing, you're being vocal and active. This is a surprisingly large class. It's because it's a foundational class. This is a basic class that is, in some cases, required, in other cases, highly recommended for almost everybody who goes through a doctoral program in education. So we've got a lot of people in class. However, I expect each of you to have a voice and to be vocal, both with your literal voice as well as your typing voice, either in the discussion board or in our live classes. Now, I've already said if you're not able to participate during a week for whatever reason, you should inform me in advance. Remember that how well you participate benefits not just you, but also your classmates, because we all learn from each other. It's the beauty of a class like this. We come from many different backgrounds and situations and contexts, and that kind of diversity and richness is important for all of us to understand as thoroughly as possible what the applications are for organizational theory and how it varies depending on context or situation or perspective. Participation is directly demonstrated by participation in the online class discussion board, which is when I'm going to talk about that a little bit. You are required to engage with your classmates in the discussion board. Some weeks, basically every other week, will be asynchronous only, meaning that you're only online, you're not logging into a live session. Other weeks will require your attendance at a live synchronous online meeting Tuesdays at 6, every other week. Okay, let me pull up, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to pull up the discussion board so I can explain to you how you participate in that. Welcome back. It was just a blink, I know. Now we're on the Blackboard page for our class. This is what it looks like. It's super exciting. You can access the syllabus here, and you can access everything else here. If we click on weekly content and discussions, and I'm going to click on February 5th, just because it's, the first week is a little different because you're posting screencasts. So I'll click on the February 5th class. I will scroll down to discussions. You will note, actually, before I do that, let me go back. It says, between now and our next synchronous class, in other words, between our February 5th live or synchronous class and our February 19th live or synchronous class, that's why it's February 5th through 18th, all the way up to, but not including, the day of our next live class, you are required to look for your name in the thread, which we'll show you in a second, for discussion group. That becomes your discussion group for this time period. And then you please initially post as you normally would in response to these questions. These are the questions that are taken directly from the objectives for that section. What is organizational leadership? How does it develop? How does it differ in educational organizations like schools and school districts from other educational organizations, or public sector organizations, or private sector organizations? And how is organizational leadership a mechanism for solving problems and managing change? That's a big, long, quite frankly, tedious question, and it's up to you to think of basically a paragraph-long answer. Let me tell you how you're going to do that. And then in your small group, please post at least twice in response to each group member's thread. Okay. So I'm going to click on it. And let's say, and I'll scroll up here. Let's say my name is Holly. Right? I'm going to look in here. Do I see Holly listed on any of these? Lo and behold, there it is. I'm Holly. This is my thread. So I click on my thread. And the first thing I do is I know I'm going to be responding to that question. If I can't remember what the question is, I can always go back to the syllabus for that week, or you can just flip back. Lo and behold, there are the objectives. You know that the questions are built off the objectives, so you could just frame a response to basically, what is this? Okay. I'm going to click reply. I'm going to say something like, in schools and classrooms, organizational leadership is, and then this is where I talk about what I think it is. This is me sharing my experience as well as me commenting based on what I learned from the readings and the videos and the other materials that have been made available to me throughout the week prior to our live class that I remember you finished all that before we come to live class. And then we've just had a discussion in class that addresses those things. So here's what I think it is. After reading it, after watching it, and after discussing it with everyone else, here's my version of it. Okay? And then I clicked submit. I'm not actually going to do that right now because I'm not Holly. But if I was Holly, I would do that. And then I submit it. And then there's this thing here. So that means then Linda, Tamara, and Melissa will all read my post at some point, hopefully early in that time frame. They will respond by saying, that's really interesting. Here's why I think you're right on target. And they would give their own rationale with some sort of evidence from their personal experience, from the readings and videos, from the class discussion, whatever it might be. And then they would push a little bit. You know, are there other ways that this could be considered? Or have you thought about thinking of it from this perspective? Or you might take a completely different track and say, gosh, you know, if I'm Linda responding to Holly, I say, Holly, this is really well thought out, but I see a couple of places where I think you might have missed something. Here's what you might have missed. So we're being super polite. We're super positive and constructive. In one scenario, we're saying, you are so right, and here's more reasons why you're right. In our other scenario, we're saying, you have made a really important post, but I still think that there are a couple of things either I don't understand or maybe could be explained differently. Have you thought about doing it this way? Right? So you're going to engage with them. Then Holly's going to read what was posted in response to her original post, and she's going to respond back. She's going to say, thank you so much for supporting what I did. I agree with your examples. Or I think the first example works, but I don't know if the second one works when you were commenting on my post. And here's why. Or if someone has critiqued Holly, Holly might say, thanks for pointing out these alternative perspectives. You know, here's where you have to work with how you respond. You can say, you're absolutely crazy, and no, you're wrong, and this is how you do it. No, you wouldn't do that. But you might still disagree. And so you'd say something like, I think I understand what you're trying to say. To me, it sounds like you're saying this, and you say it. This is problematic for me because I don't understand how, name an example, would be explained using this rationale. Right? And so you're just engaging each other in this small group. It's just Linda, Holly, Tamara, and Melissa talking to each other this week in this little group. So you don't have to do this for everybody in class, but you do have to do it for the 3 other people that are in your discussion group. And you have to make sure that you are responding as well as commenting on theirs. I'm just going to say right now, in order to be participating in the discussion board in the way that I'm asking, remember, you have basically 2 weeks to do this between the class, the one live class and the next live class. If those of you in your group wait until 2 days before the next class and you try to do it all at once, It's not possible, and your participation grade is going to suffer. So my recommendation to you when we talk about participation, let me go back up here, because participation, I'm just going to point out, is a letter grade. It's a letter grade. Right? That's 10 points out of 100. That's the difference between an A and a B, or a B and a C, or a C and a D. I'm not even talking about Fs, because I don't think anybody's going to go that direction. You want to make sure that you're participating as early and as often as possible. I would recommend checking in on the discussion board every 2 to 3 days at a minimum, all right? So you're engaging with each other throughout. If you have other questions about participation and what that looks like, let me know. Happy to help with that. Okay. Participation in the live classes will consist of doing the same sorts of things. You will have read and watched and done whatever else you're supposed to do before class. So you've got all the background information you need. I am rarely going to lecture in our live classes. I am going to facilitate, and I'm going to guide our discussion, and believe you and me both. I have a very definite perspective on what organizational theory is, how to use it, what's important, how do you interpret it or apply it. And I will give you plenty of that, because this is what I do for a living. This is one of the things I'm passionate about. But you are responsible for bringing your questions, your comments, your expertise, and your understanding of the material to class, and not just sitting and watching, or not, working on email while we're having a discussion, but actively and continuously engaging. That's super important. Discussion leader. You will see on the schedule, the weekly schedule for our live meetings, that there are discussion leaders that will be assigned for most of the weeks of this semester. You will be grouped into small groups for each of the weeks. And that group that you're in will be responsible for preparing and leading a discussion on the readings in class for that week. Your classmates will be providing you feedback on how well you did. So try to make it informative, relevant, and interesting. And try to make it so that it is not just you presenting or reading off of slides or regurgitating a summary. Your discussion leading should be interactive and application-oriented. In other words, even though it's an online class, how do you get people to engage with each other over the readings? How do you help them further their understanding of how to take these sometimes very abstract theoretical concepts and apply them to very real-world situations and dilemmas? That is your role as a discussion leader. Your role as a discussion leader is not to read a summary off of a piece of paper that's just off screen. That's boring and will get you 0 points. Instead, it's how do you create something interactive? So you could provide a scenario and have people take different roles in that scenario and ask them to use particular theories to gauge how they would react or what their response might be in those situations. You could create a game where people have to use clues or use evidence that you provide in order to identify which theoretical framework or which perspective might be demonstrated through that. I mean, there are so many different ways. I'm happy to talk about more of them with you. But you're working in groups, so that makes it a little easier. You and your group need to read ahead. In other words, you can't just wait until that week to read what you're reading for that week. You have to read ahead. I'm going to ask you, it's not written in here, but I'm asking you right now, I would like to meet with your group the week before you lead discussion. So we will set up a Zoom meeting with your group at a time that's convenient for all of you. We will meet at least a week before your discussion to talk about what you're going to do for your discussion leading activity, like how you're going to do it. And I will give you feedback. You will need to have prepared what your idea is before we meet a week before. So you really have to plan for this. This isn't something that you can just sit around and wait for until the end. I encourage you to be looking at the syllabus before we have our first class and thinking about what the topics and the readings are and which of those weeks would be your first choice to be part of the discussion leadership team. And maybe have a second or third choice as well in case you and everybody else wants to be week 3, but there can only be a certain number of people for each week. You might not get your first choice. So what would be your second choice? Be thinking about that ahead of time. Or if there are folks that you absolutely know that you want to work with, maybe you know some people that are also taking this class and you've worked with them before and you guys have really good collaborative chemistry. Great. Maybe you guys should be discussing about which week you think would be a really good one for you to work on. And so that when we have that discussion in class, you can suggest your week and your preferences right off the bat. Okay. So participation and discussion leader, that's 20 points total. Again, that's 2-letter grades. So it's important. You really need to do that. You can still pass the class with an 80 if you bombed both of those, but you'd have to ace the course project, which is worth 80 points total. The course project is our big thing. You're working on this individually. It is written assignments that you will then do every other week for a while, starting on March 5th. And then you will put them all together for the final product that you will hopefully revise as you go along and then turn in at the end as sort of the ta-da moment when you come to a realization of how your theoretical framework interacts with a particular problem or issue. It'll be in stages though. So everything that you write for the course project will become part of the final complete draft. You'll see, and I'm just skipping to the end, put each day's written assignment together in a revised and complete version of your theoretical framework. The revised complete draft of your plan should have a cover page with a title and your name and be labeled or ordered as follows. You're going to have an abstract. Here's a little guide on how to write an abstract because that's the one thing I'm not having you do until the end. You're going to have an overview and significance of the problem. Wait a second. That happens to be what the name of your first written assignment is. All right, you see where this is going. You're going to have then the research question and context. Wait a minute. Research question and context. Yep, that's the second written assignment. So you'll see that each of these is a major section of your final project assignment. So you're taking each of these, you're writing them, I'm giving you feedback. My encouragement to you would be to revise these assignments as you get the feedback so that when you get to the end of the course and you're trying to put everything together, you're not trying to remember what did Wiseman say about that research question, what was his input on there, or maybe your ideas change and evolve over the course of the semester. You don't want to have to wait until the very end to say, oh my gosh, I have to completely rewrite everything because this isn't what I think anymore. Or my later assignments don't match what I was thinking in my earlier assignments. So be revising throughout this semester. Okay. The course project consists of, on March 5th, 5 points for overview and significance of the problem. It's got 3 subsections in it, an overview of a social or an educational problem, hopefully one that's combined or is heavy on the education. This is where you get to tell about the problem, topic, or issue related to educational organizations that you want to solve or understand and why. Then current trends. Tell the reader what people or organizations are currently doing to address or solve the problem, topic, or issue identified right here. And then barriers or obstacles. Tell the reader why nobody else has solved this problem yet and suggest what the main barriers and obstacles are to solving it too. Be realistic. This is going to require a couple of things from you. One, it requires you to identify a problem, topic, or issue related to an educational organization that you actually want to write about for several months. That's important. So make it real, make it meaningful. Something that you are engaged in or you think you'll be wanting to do as part of the work that you're doing either outside of your university studies in the real world or something that you want to be part of your dissertation eventually or whatever it might be. Secondly, current trends. This is going to require you to do a little bit of background research. You're going to actually have to go find articles or policies or other sorts of documentation about what people are doing. In other words, at some point, you're going to have to do a literature review on your problem, topic, or issue related to educational organizations so that you can talk about it meaningfully and professionally. Same with the barriers and obstacles. It would be helpful if you had some data or evidence, or at least an article or two that would explain what some of the difficulties are in resolving your problem, or what other people have done and why it has or hasn't worked. For the research question in context, which is 5 points due March 26th, you're going to do root causes, context, environmental landscape, and opportunity. Read through these. The same is going to be true again. You're going to not only have to think about what your own approach to this is, using the theories that we're studying in class. Remember, that's going to be constantly important. All of this relates to developing your own theoretical framework. So talking about where the problem really comes from rather than just treating some of the symptoms, that really is you talking about what your basic theoretical understanding is of the topic, issue, or problem. Giving some context for it, talking to us about opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So each of these are going to lead up to the theoretical framework itself. You're going to have to explicitly talk about what your theoretical framework is. Eventually, 20 points on April 23rd. You're going to present this to the rest of the class on May 7th in class. This will be a formal presentation. It will be very short, but it will be formal. So you'll be doing that in the live synchronous class. And then after our classes end, because this is our last live class, 3 days later, you'll need a final complete written draft. So writing this, I want you to write in formal style. Imagine you were writing this as part of your dissertation proposal. Right? It'll be important for you to have a formal academic style. APA is our guide. It guides the reference style that we use, the writing style that we use, the heading style that we use. It's APA all the way. If you're not familiar with the American Psychological Association and its guidelines for references and writing, it's time to become familiar. If you have questions about where to find information on that, please let me know either in class or in an email. I will point you in the right direction. Okay. Then we have a week-by-week guide to what we're doing in class. This very much mimics what is on the Blackboard site. And in fact, I'm just going to switch back there for a second and go to the weekly content and discussion section. And I will show you that for each of the weeks, you should see the same thing here that you're seeing in the syllabus, with the addition of an introductory video and a link to join the live class that week. So you can use the syllabus, or you can use the Blackboard site on a week-to-week basis. I like the syllabus sometimes because it has everything at once. Like here, I've got January 22nd, but if I want the next section, I have to go back to weekly content and then go into the February 5th folder. And it will have the discussion leaders listed, the objectives, links to the readings and the videos, application activities. By the way, I'm going to get rid of this quiz stuff. We're not going to do the quizzes this semester because I think you have enough going on. And anyway, so you can do either in the syllabus or in the Blackboard course to see what's happening. You will notice, and I'm just going to scroll down, that we have a couple of guest speakers that are going to be visiting us. The first one, I'm just going to make sure Dr. Ramirez is the first one. Our first one will be the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and Programs at the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. It's Dr. Ramirez. She is actually a graduate of the Educational Leadership Program at Texas Tech University. She is a fantastic professional. She understands educational organizations like nobody you've ever met before. And she will be visiting us on March 5th. So in addition to discussing the readings, which the discussion leaders will do, and any of the other activities we're doing that day, we'll be spending about an hour with Dr. Ramirez. Same with March 26th, we will have Dr. Opperman. He is the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and also the Director of Community Engagement at Texas Tech University's system. He also has a long and distinguished career working with the Texas State Legislature. And so he has a lot of understanding of educational policy and politics, as well as educational organizations. We will be joined the following week by a special guest speaker, Dr. Lauder. He's the Associate Vice Provost of E-Learning and Academic Partnership partnerships at Texas Tech University, also has a career in educational policy and politics outside of his Texas Tech career, and certainly understands the inner workings of what happens with educational organizations. Dr. Lauder's office, and him in particular, are also responsible for the K through 12 online school that Texas Tech University operates. So he has a lot of really interesting perspectives on educational organizations and theoretical understandings for that. You will see then that we have the last real day, the last day of class, May 7th. You will give your presentations. You'll submit the final thing by May 10th. There are a couple of other policies that I want to point out here. One is that you need to stay on top of what you're doing over the course of the semester. We're going to do all we can to make sure that you are excelling, but it's ultimately up to you. You need to make sure that you are turning in what you need to turn in, engaging and participating in the ways that you need to engage and participate, etc. All of your assignments will be submitted using Blackboard in the weekly folder for when it's due. Look for the link there. You should be using APA format. Type it in a Word document, 1-inch margins, 12-point font. I should say New Times Roman. With your name in the header, please don't do any cover pages. You will submit all assignments through the Blackboard assignment tool rather than by email. I would like for you to give them names like this: your last name, your first name, the course description or course indicator, and then the date that the assignment is due. So for me, on the first one, it would be Wiseman Alexander EDLD 6300. Okay. Show up and participate. You can see your grades on Blackboard as after they're due or after they're graded. That will become visible to you. Late assignments are not encouraged. I'll just say that right now. You need to be able to complete them on time. It is part of who we are as professionals. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. I've already explained out how our online discussions will work. The important thing here is one of the things that I get asked about, will the instructor be reading the postings? Because I'm not part of your small groups, it will be rare for me to participate in your discussions. But yes, I will be reading. Actually, it says selected postings. I'll be reading most of your postings, even though I probably won't be posting comments. I might occasionally, but I certainly won't be on a regular basis. But I will be reading them all the time. If you disagree with each other's opinions, that's fine. Just remember that you want to be honest and professional and polite. Civil dialogue is especially important. But just to be honest, I want you to engage each other. And people you respect, you're able to disagree with in an appropriate way. So you respect each other and you should be fine. Okay, it's rare for an incomplete to happen. Don't expect it. Withdrawals. If you need a withdrawal, it's your responsibility to become aware of the deadlines. There's a calendar that will help you understand when you can withdraw with different penalties. I don't want you to withdraw, so there's my 2 cents. All of our communication with each other will be through email unless we're talking live or on the phone. Please only use the TTU email system. So if your email address does not end with @ttu.edu, then don't send me an email from there. And I will never email you at an address that is not an @ttu.edu email address. Okay, be good to each other. Read this, understand our responsibilities. The course is online. It's 100% online, even when we're synchronous. You will need to have these kinds of things available to you. We will also be using Zoom for our live synchronous classes. If you have not used Zoom before, the first time you click on the link to join, it will ask you to download a small plugin. It takes a minute or 2, and then you're good to go. This is important. If you have any need for technical assistance with Blackboard or accessing the syllabus or whatever else, please call 806-742-HELP. That's the Texas Tech Computer Help Desk. You can also, if you have trouble with Blackboard, visit this website for Blackboard-specific student support. Okay, I've already told you I'm not going to lecture, although I might sometimes, but it's going to be very interactive, very seminar style. This academic integrity section is basically a section saying don't cheat or plagiarize. That can get you expelled or I hate to say it, worse. So it's really important that you make sure that you do all of your work, that you cite wherever and whenever always is appropriate. Make sure that you are not doing anything that you would consider unethical, but actually that not only you would consider, but the Texas Tech University Quality Enhancement Plan and Academic Integrity Task Force would consider unethical. You're a professional. If you need any special arrangements or considerations for because of a disability, just let the Student Disability Services Office know. You can contact them in this hall if you're on campus, or you can call this number if you need any sort of special arrangement. We will be happy to provide classroom accommodations to you, but we need verification that you've communicated with the Student Disability Services about what that would be. If you intend to observe a religious holy day, make it known in writing to me prior to your absence. It's not a problem, you just need to let us know. We do not obviously encourage any sort of discrimination, harassment, or sexual violence. Again, there are severe penalties for engaging in any of this kind of behavior. Please be familiar with what is and is not appropriate. There are plenty of links and information sources here for you. Make sure that you are always in compliance with that. If you have a different orientation than what is normal, or I shouldn't use that word, what is typical, that may be a better word, for your community here at Texas Tech, please know that you are welcome, that I consider myself an ally, that I can assist you in connecting with resources, even though occasionally I use a wrong word, and I apologize for that. But we're here to support you, so know that you are welcome and included. If you want to appeal any of your grades, you're welcome to do that using the grade appeal procedures outlined by the university. It would be wonderful if you talk to me about that as well. I'd be happy to discuss whatever you're doing in class because you're going to be graded. All right. That's the syllabus. We made it through. Congratulations. This is, what, a short little video, right? This only took a few minutes. I will see you in class, and I look forward to engaging with you throughout this semester and hopefully beyond.